Well, a drop in demand for postal mail has increased the need for postal services to evolve. And South Africa's had the added challenge of a recent strike action in the sector affecting the post office. So joining us to discuss courier and postal services is Henny Heymans, who's Managing Director of DHL Express South Africa, and Jan Raskotsi, who is Group Executive of the mail business at the South African Post Office. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome. Let's start with you, Jan Ras. Seeing that the recent topical strike, unfortunate for everyone concerned, we can talk about the effect of that, but let's just take a sort of big picture view, and in terms of the evolution of couriers, of mail and things like that. If the post office didn't exist, would we have to invent it, or would the private sector simply take up what it does?
Well, the private sector would simply take over what it does. And as you rightly said, there are challenges at the moment in terms of customer preferring to receive some items electronic. And this is basically what the SAPO is now planning to deal with. And in terms of the strike itself, it was very clear that there is a need for the postal service.
What was the effect on your market share? Because presumably the private sector would have taken up some slack there.
Well, obviously, my colleague here from the courier company will attest to the fact that they did get some business because of the strike. We had some contingency plan that we had put in place, but obviously customers have a certain way that they want to get service from the post office, and when they did not get that, they went for alternatives. But with the strike now over, we now in discussion with our customers in terms of what can we do better next time if we experience something like a strike again.
Henny, what kind of feed-through did you see in terms of market share coming your way? Were you able to effectively leverage off what presented itself as opportunity for you in this case?
Alishia, there's definitely a benefit that comes through sad events like that. The time period in which they've experienced a strike is too short to really measure the impact on one's market share. But you definitely see, as one operator gets into a labour dispute market, that some of that business does move around, certainly.
Overall, what's your assessment of the competitive landscape in South Africa specifically?
I think it's very healthy. You've got all the major players in South Africa, and outside of that, because of the BLNS countries and the spread and the closeness around South Africa, it's a very competitive market for sure.
We talked evolution, Jan Ras. How is the post office evolving? One thing that comes to mind is one hears about Postbank.
Yes.
So maybe the post office offers services in particularly rural areas or underserviced areas which banks don't, although banks are in most places.
Yeah. Firstly, what I would like to just indicate is the fact that, issues of electronic alternatives are a challenge to the traditional mail in the South African Post Office. But what we did as a South African Post Office, instead of looking at electronic alternatives as a competition, we've embraced that. So we basically are providing some of the products and services in the post office. If a customer prefers to receive that electronic, we'll do that. And if they want to receive it physical, we definitely do that. So instead of fighting against the changes in technology, we've actually embraced that to make sure that we stay in business.
As you shift and adapt your strategy moving forward in order to keep a handle on market share and grow that market share moving forward, what kind of stride are you making in terms of reputational issues, working to improve the post office reputation, because lots of question marks around reliability and the kind of service that is provided?
If I go back to the issue of reliability and the issue of reputation, obviously, if you are experiencing things like strikes that are as unprotected as the ones that we've been experiencing now, you do suffer some, damage in terms of your reputation. And the fact that we also are not in a position to provide the service as we should and as we had, promised our customers, that also has a very big dent on our reputation. But what we also have done is that during the course of these strikes, we obviously get in touch with our customers. And the unfortunate part about the strikes that we experienced recently are unprotected strikes. They are illegal, and as a result, we were not given an opportunity to counter them through the CCMA and so on. So, but like you rightly said, we have to make sure that we get in touch with our customers, make them aware of what is happening, and the contingency plans that we're putting in place.
Looking at this environment, DHL, that you courier things, you carry things around. Now the email revolution and the electronic revolution, you're also affected. I mean, we might say that this is a state enterprise, you're a private sector enterprise, but you're both actually affected. How do you stop becoming a dinosaur where your market share, however well you do it, a market share of communication generally just keeps shrinking?
Excellent question, David. You've got to ensure that you stay at the forefront of this ever-changing customer needs environment that you have. And what you have now is customer wants to send their document or their parcel as late as possible, and they want it there as early as possible the next morning. So you've got to be able to adapt and adjust your business model accordingly. And then, as my colleague has indicated, there's a growing need amongst the consumer base to know more about their logistics. They want to see data and they want to see the transparency. So you've got to absolutely keep track of the IT revolution that comes hand in hand with our environment.
Would you play, I mean, I know the post office plays a social role. It's expected to play a social role. I want to ask you in a moment, do you have to subsidise that social role so you can't make, you've got to charge more? But do you play a social role? Do you see it as your responsibility to service areas that aren't serviced normally by the private sector?
I think, David, that our role is more a commercial role. So we go where the businesses are going. And so that is at the forefront of our minds when we invest and when we expand our footprint. So for us, it's about the commercial element of it. The social part of our business is covered under the social
responsibilities. Is that another way of saying rich business people can use you and you make a lot of money out of them? Rich business people don't use you and you've got to subsidise the poor.
Well, the rich people do not have a choice. They have to use me because I go to places where no one else goes. We're covering areas which are not viable. But because we are a universal service provider, we have to get to those places and make sure that communities in those areas do get postal services. So we actually, what has happened is there has always been a question as to why do you have a monopoly on letters up to a mass of 1 kilogram and so on. That was basically to make sure that we subsidize those areas where we don't make money.
Having said all of this, Henny, I mean, in the US, when FedEx releases its earnings reports, it's often used as a bellwether for economic activity, in the States. To what extent can we extrapolate that here? What sense are you getting of the kind of economic activity that's currently at play in South Africa?
Alishia, it's very true. And we've often said that there's a pretty direct correlation between the volumes in our business and the health of the economy.
Give us an idea of what those volumes are at the moment. How many tens of thousands of things per day or whatever?
In South Africa, we do approximately 120,000 a month, so it gives you approximately 1.5 million per annum. And then you can extrapolate that across the continent. But never forget that we're in a very lucky place right now. There's 7 of the world's fastest growing economies are based in Africa. So it's absolutely the place for people like ourselves to be at now. This is where the growth is taking place.
Is that pushing you into the rest of Africa? Just how aggressively are you pursuing that?
We are already servicing more than 50 countries across the continent, and we have been on the continent for over 30 years. So it's now a matter of where we want to expand in those different countries. But from a DHL perspective, we've been on the continent for a long time. We've got over 700 vehicles servicing the continent, approximately 4,000 staff members. So it's a good and solid business concern for us.
Jan Russ, just to get from the post office's point of view, how in terms of your normal traffic, how much do you think you've lost as a result of the strike, and will you get it back?
Well, we're quite sure that we will get it back. We've lost quite a substantial, number of.
Just put a number to it.
I would say out of the 45,000 that we do on a daily basis, we would have lost most probably 5,000. But I don't think that we've lost it. It's more like customers went for alternatives whilst we were having a strike. So we still have to enter into further discussions with those customers to establish as to whether are they gone or are they still staying with us. The good part about our part is that we giving them in terms of price. It's a standardized price across the country because we are a universal service provider, and customers are also leveraging on that as well because cost-wise it does benefit them.